She found him slumped against a shipping container, blood pooling beneath designer shoes that cost more than her grandmother's rent. Two infants were cradled against his chest, their tiny fists gripping his blood-soaked shirt like anchors. He was dying, and when his eyes found hers through the Newark fog, they held the kind of raw terror that only comes when you're about to lose everything. The docks had been silent for hours. The kind of November silence that made even the seagulls avoid the shoreline. Gracie Fletcher's stomach had been empty since yesterday. Her jacket was 3 sizes too big, sleeves rolled 4 times just to free her hands. Her sneakers were held together with duct tape that peeled more with each step. She was taking the long route through the industrial piers, where the recycling bins behind the warehouses sometimes held bottles worth 5 cents each. Just her and the rusted containers. That's when she heard it.
Crying.
2 voices. Weak, overlapping, like a heartbeat struggling to continue. A dock worker walked past, clipboard in hand, eyes straight ahead. A delivery van rolled by without slowing. A security camera rotated on its mount, recording nothing that mattered. Nobody stopped. Nobody heard what she heard. But Gracie's feet moved before fear could stop them. She slipped between 2 containers. The air tasted like salt and motor oil. A single overhead lamp flickered yellow light across the concrete. And that's when she saw him. Propped against rusted metal, white dress shirt drenched in more than rain, a dark stain spreading from his ribs. In his arms, 2 newborns wrapped in blankets that looked softer than anything Gracie had ever touched, faces red from crying. A diamond cufflink caught the light near his wrist. His eyes locked onto hers through the mist. "You heard them," he whispered, blood staining his lips. Gracie froze. She should run. Call someone. Do anything except move closer to a bleeding stranger in a place where screams got swallowed by fog. But the babies were getting weaker, their cries fading to whimpers. "Promise me something," he said, his voice breaking. "Before I tell you who I am. Before any of this makes sense." The wind cut through her thin jacket. "Promise me you won't leave them." If you are ready to enjoy this story, click that subscribe button, like this video, and comment where in the world you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more wonderful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get into the story. Gracie's knees hit the wet concrete before she decided to kneel. The puddle soaked through her baby blue dress instantly, cold water mixing with something darker, thicker. Up close, the man was massive. Even dying, even slumped against rusted metal, he looked like someone who commanded rooms just by entering them. His hair was slicked back, rain-soaked. A thick gold chain glinted at his collar. The babies squirmed against his chest, their cries weakening to tired whimpers. "I don't," Gracie's voice cracked. "I don't know what to do." "You do," he said, and his free hand moved with surprising steadiness. He was wearing a ring on his index finger, thick gold with symbols she didn't recognize etched around the band. He slid it off, reached for her hand. Gracie flinched, but didn't pull away. His fingers were cold as he pressed the ring onto her thumb. It was too large, heavy, sliding down until it caught at her knuckle. "Inside," he whispered, turning it so she could see. Numbers were engraved on the inner band, small and precise. "Call them. Tell them Elliot Floyd sent you. Tell them about the girls." Elliot Floyd. The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it felt like dropping a stone into dark water, waiting for the splash that never came. "Protect the girls," he said, and his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her chest hurt. "Promise me." "I promise," Gracie heard herself say. His exhale was relief and surrender mixed together. One of the babies started crying harder, face scrunched and red. The other one just stared up with unfocused eyes, too quiet. Gracie fumbled for her phone, the screen cracked but still working. She tilted the ring toward the flickering lamp overhead, squinting at the numbers. Her fingers shook as she dialed. It rang once.
"Yeah."
a voice like gravel and cigarettes.
Elliot Floyd sent me.
He said, there are girls, babies, and he's. Where? Gracie looked around, panic rising. The docks. Newark. Container yard off Morrison Avenue, I think. There's a yellow lamp and… Don't move. The line went dead. 12 minutes later, headlights cut through the fog. A black SUV rolled to a stop. No sirens, no screaming tires. Just smooth, purposeful motion. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He wore a dark suit that somehow looked pressed despite the weather. His eyes found Elliot first, then the babies, then landed on Gracie with the kind of cold assessment that made her feel like an insect under glass. You the girl? He asked. Gracie nodded, standing slowly. The ring felt like an anchor on her thumb. I'm Vito, he said, moving past her without waiting for a response. You just inherited a very dangerous promise, kid. The SUV smelled like leather and something medicinal. Gracie sat in the back corner, pressed against the door, watching two men in surgical masks work on Elliot Floyd in the middle seat. The twins were strapped into car seats that looked brand new, still had tags dangling from the handles. One was crying. The other had finally fallen asleep, tiny chest rising and falling in rapid, fragile breaths. Where are we going? Gracie asked. Vito didn't turn around from the passenger seat. Somewhere safe. The city lights blurred past, then disappeared entirely. They took an exit Gracie didn't recognize, drove through industrial parks and past warehouses that all looked abandoned. Finally, the SUV pulled into an underground garage. Concrete walls. Harsh fluorescent lights. Armed men in dark suits who nodded at Vito but didn't speak. They moved Elliot onto a gurney, wheels squeaking against polished floors. Gracie followed, still wearing the ring, her wet sneakers leaving prints on the tile. They entered an elevator that went down instead of up. When the doors opened, she stepped into what looked like a hospital room hidden beneath the earth. Vito gestured to a chair.
Seat.
Gracie sat. He poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter, downed it in one swallow, then finally looked at her properly. You know who Elliot Floyd is?
No.
Good. That means you're not lying. Vito set the glass down with a soft click. Elliot Floyd runs the largest syndicate on the East Coast. Shipping, construction, waste management. Some legitimate, most not. He's worth more money than you'll ever count. And tonight, his right-hand man, his consigliera, his most trusted advisor for 15 years, put 3 bullets in him and left him to bleed out like a dog. Gracie's hands gripped the chair arms. Why? Salvatore Moretti wanted control. Wanted the territory, the connections, the empire. Vito's jaw tightened. And he wanted those babies dead. With Elliot gone and no heirs, everything transfers to the old council. Sal's council. The room felt smaller suddenly. Gracie looked at the twins sleeping in their carriers near the medical equipment. They were so tiny, helpless. I can't, she started. You already did. Vito cut her off. You made a promise to a dying man. You wear his ring. In our world, that means something. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes hard. I can get you out right now. Put you in a cab, send you home, pretend this never happened. But those girls… He nodded toward the twins. They'll be dead within a week. Sal will make sure of it. Gracie's throat burned. Her grandmother's face flashed through her mind. The tiny apartment. The safety of being nobody. But she'd heard them crying when no one else did. She'd made a promise. I'm not leaving, Gracie said quietly. Vito studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Then God help you, kid. The conference room had windows that didn't open and air that tasted recycled. 6 men sat around a mahogany table that probably cost more than Gracie's entire building. They all wore expensive suits. They all had the same look in their eyes, the one that said they'd seen bodies and hadn't lost sleep over it. Gracie stood near the door in her baby blue dress, the one she'd been wearing for 2 days now. It was stained with blood and rainwater, too short in the sleeves, missing a button near the collar. The ring hung loose on her thumb, spinning whenever she moved her hand. The twins were upstairs with a nurse Vito personally vetted. Gracie could still hear their crying in her head. This is what we're working with. A man with silver hair and a scar through his eyebrow gestured at her like she was a stain on the furniture. A kid from the docks. Elliot gave her the ring, Vito said from the head of the table. Elliot was bleeding out and desperate. Another man, younger, with rings on every finger. No offense to the girl, but what's she gonna do? She can't even reach the top shelf. A few of them laughed. Not cruel laughter exactly, but dismissive. The kind that said she didn't matter. Gracie had heard that laugh her whole life. She stays until we sort this out, Vito said, his voice flat. Anyone disagrees, take it up with Elliot when he wakes up. The door opened. A woman in a dark pantsuit entered carrying a tablet. Sorry I'm late, she said smoothly. Traffic was insane. She set a leather briefcase down, took a seat at the far end. Catch me up? Gracie watched her. Something felt wrong. The woman's suit was perfect, but there was a tiny thread hanging from her left cuff. Her nails were manicured except for her right index finger, which had a chip in the polish. And she'd come in through the main door, not the private entrance every other person here had used. Who's she? Gracie asked suddenly. The room went quiet. The silver-haired man frowned. That's Carla. She handles our legal. No, she's not, Gracie interrupted. Her heart hammered, but her voice stayed steady. Check her briefcase. Vito's hand moved to his jacket. Carla froze, eyes darting to the door. I've seen her before, Gracie continued, the memory clicking into place. 2 days ago, outside the grocery store on Morrison. She was taking pictures of the buildings. She had a different hair color, but same walk, same way of holding her shoulders. Vito stood slowly. 2 other men blocked the door. You've got good eyes, kid, the woman said, her smooth voice gone cold and hard. She didn't reach for the briefcase. Vito opened it anyway. Inside was a recording device, red light blinking. The room erupted. Chairs scraped. Voices overlapped. Someone made a phone call in rapid Italian. Vito looked at Gracie across the chaos, something like respect flickering in his expression. Maybe the boss knew what he was doing after all, he said. They gave Gracie a room on the 3rd floor with a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud and a bathroom with water pressure that actually worked. She showered for the first time in 3 days, watched the blood and dirt swirl down the drain. Someone had left clean clothes on the bed. Jeans that fit. A soft sweater. Socks without holes. The twins' nursery was next door. Gracie spent most of her time there, sitting in the rocking chair by the window, watching them sleep. She'd learned their differences quickly. The one with the tiny birthmark on her left ankle was Emma. She cried loud and angry when she was hungry. The quieter one was Lily. She just stared with dark, serious eyes like she was already trying to figure out the world. On the 4th day, Vito brought in the nanny. Her name was Miss Caroline. She had perfect posture, silver hair pulled into a neat bun, and references from 3 prominent families that Vito's people had verified twice. She smiled warmly at Gracie, called her dear, and immediately began organizing the nursery with professional efficiency. Gracie wanted to trust her, wanted to believe that someone this kind could actually be kind, but she'd learned better. She started watching. Miss Caroline arrived every morning at 7. She prepared bottles with practiced hands, sterilized everything, kept meticulous notes about feeding times and diaper changes. She sang lullabies in French. She never complained, never seemed tired. She was perfect. Too perfect. On the 6th day, Gracie pretended to leave for breakfast but doubled back, shoes silent on the carpeted hallway. She cracked the nursery door open just enough to see inside. Miss Caroline stood at the counter, her back to the door, preparing the morning bottles. The formula, the water, the careful measuring. Then she reached into her cardigan pocket. Gracie's breath caught. Miss Caroline pulled out a small vial, no bigger than her thumb. Clear liquid inside. She unscrewed one of the bottle caps, her movements quick and practiced, and tilted the vial over it. "What are you doing?" Miss Caroline spun around, the vial clutched in her fist. Her warm smile was gone. In its place was something cold, calculated. "Gracie, dear, you startled me." She slipped the vial back into her pocket smoothly. "I was just adding vitamins. The doctor recommended." "Show me the bottle." "Excuse me?"
Show me
"The bottle." They stared at each other across the nursery. Emma started fussing in her crib. Lily's eyes tracked the movement, watching. Miss Caroline's hand moved toward her pocket again, but this time Gracie saw the shift in her stance, the way her weight centered. This woman wasn't a nanny. She was something else entirely. Gracie lunged for the panic button Vito had installed by the door. The alarm shrieked through the building. Miss Caroline ran, but she didn't make it past the stairwell. Vito's men were already there, moving like shadows, blocking every exit. They found the vial in her pocket. Vito held it up to the light, his face carved from stone. "Ricin," he said quietly. "Enough to kill them both within 12 hours. Gracie's legs gave out. She sat hard on the nursery floor, hands shaking. Sal Moretti wasn't just a threat. He was already inside their walls. They moved at 3 in the morning. No warning, no explanation. Vito woke Gracie, with a hand on her shoulder and 2 minutes to pack. The twins were already bundled in their carriers, still sleeping somehow through the chaos. 3 black SUVs, a private airstrip, and a plane with no markings. Gracie watched New Jersey disappear beneath the clouds and wondered if she'd ever see it again. The Miami safe house sat behind 12-foot walls and palm trees that looked too perfect to be real. Spanish tile, floor-to-ceiling windows with bulletproof glass, and enough armed guards to invade a small country. The ocean was a blue line in the distance. Gracie could taste salt in the air. It should have felt safe. It didn't. She stood on the 3rd-floor balcony that night, watching the waves, and all she could think about was her grandmother. Alone in their apartment, making tea with the same chipped mug, watching the door, waiting for Gracie to come home. "She's protected," Vito said from the doorway. He always appeared like that, silent until he wanted to be heard. "2 of my best guys watching her building. Sal makes a move toward her. We'll know before he's through the lobby." "That's supposed to make me feel better?"
No.
Vito stepped onto the balcony, leaning against the railing beside her. "Nothing about this should make you feel better. But she's alive because of it." Gracie's hands gripped the rail. The ring caught the moonlight. "He's going to keep coming." "Yes. And eventually he'll find a way in. Another nanny, another guard, another someone we're supposed to trust." "Probably." She turned to look at him. "You're really bad at the reassurance thing." Vito almost smiled. "Almost. I don't lie to people I respect." The words hung between them. Below, Emma started crying. Lily joined in seconds later, their voices carrying through the open door. Gracie watched Vito's face, saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes tracked every shadow in the yard. He was looking for threats in everything. Looking for power, for danger, for the knife coming from the dark. That's when she understood. "He's looking for the wrong person," Gracie said quietly. Vito raised an eyebrow. "Sal. He's looking for someone like you. Someone strong, someone connected, someone who matters." Gracie looked down at her hands, still rough from years of scavenging, nails bitten short. "He's not looking for a street rat in a baby blue dress. You're not a street rat anymore." "No," Gracie said, something cold settling in her chest. "But I know how to be invisible when I need to be. I know how to move through places without being seen. I know how to survive when nobody's watching." She met Vito's eyes. That's not weakness. That's my weapon. Vito studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Smart kid. I have to be, Gracie said, turning back to the ocean. Or we're all dead. The house was supposed to be clean. Vito's team had swept it twice, checking for cameras, bugs, anything that could compromise them. They'd repainted the walls, replaced the furniture, installed new locks on every door. State-of-the-art security, Vito called it. Impenetrable. Gracie didn't believe in impenetrable. She was feeding Lily 3 days later when she noticed it. A scratch on the wall near the nursery window, barely visible in the afternoon light. Thin and precise, like someone had used a blade to cut through fresh paint. The wall had been redone less than a week ago. She'd watched the painters herself. Her fingers traced the mark. It was a perfect rectangle, maybe 2 inches across. Gracie set Lily down gently in her crib and grabbed the butter knife she'd been using to open the formula cans. She wedged the tip into the scratch, working it carefully along the edge. The paint flaked away. Beneath it, she felt something give. A small panel, perfectly fitted into the drywall, popped free. Inside the hollow space sat a device no bigger than a quarter. Black metal, red light blinking once every few seconds. Wires ran deeper into the wall, disappearing into the infrastructure. Gracie's stomach dropped. She didn't touch it, didn't move, just stared at the tiny piece of technology that had been listening to everything. Every plan, every conversation, every moment she'd spent with the twins. Vito was in the kitchen when she found him. He was going over schedules with 2 guards, marking routes on a map spread across the counter. Vito. Something in her voice made everyone stop. We need to go upstairs.
Now.
Don't say anything. His hand went to his weapon instinctively, but he followed without questions. The guards fell in behind them, silent and alert. Gracie led them to the nursery, pointed at the exposed device in the wall. Vito's face went stone still. He pulled out his phone, typed something, then gestured for everyone to leave the room. They gathered in the hallway, Vito's fingers flying across the screen. He held it up for Gracie to read. How many rooms have you checked? She typed back. Just this one? Vito's jaw tightened. He sent a message to someone, then another. Within minutes, the house was swarming with specialists in dark clothes carrying equipment that looked military-grade. They worked in silence, methodically checking every wall, every outlet, every piece of furniture. By sunset, they'd found 7 more devices. Nursery, master bedroom, kitchen, Vito's office, living room, garage, even the panic room. Sal Moretti had been listening to everything from the beginning. Vito stood in the hallway, watching his team bag the devices, his expression carved from granite. When he finally looked at Gracie, there was something different in his eyes. Not just respect anymore.
Fear.
He knew we'd move the girls, Vito said quietly. He knew we'd use them as bait eventually. He's been 3 steps ahead this entire time. Gracie looked through the nursery door at Emma and Lily, sleeping peacefully in their cribs, completely unaware they were pieces on a chessboard. Then we need to change the game, she said. The charity gala was Vito's idea. The Bellagio, Las Vegas, 300 guests, 20 news cameras, and enough security to make the Secret Service jealous. The Children's Health Foundation annual fundraiser, an event so public and so protected that violence would be impossible. Every major syndicate family on the West Coast would be there, including Salvatore Moretti. He can't refuse the invitation without raising suspicion, Vito explained, spreading blueprints across the dining table. His legitimate businesses donate heavily to this foundation. He's expected to attend, expected to smile and shake hands and pretend he's a pillar of the community. Gracie studied the layout. Ballroom, exits, security checkpoints. And that's where I come in. That's where you come in. The plan was simple and terrifying. Gracie would attend as the twins' guardian, publicly announced for the first time. She'd be introduced to the crowd, photographed with Elliot's daughters, Her face and name spread across every news outlet covering the event. No more hiding. No more invisibility. She'd become the target right out in the open. He'll have to react, Vito continued. Either he accepts you as legitimate and backs off, or he makes a move and exposes himself in front of 300 witnesses and 24 cameras. You're betting he'll make a move. I'm betting he won't be able to help himself. Vito's eyes were cold. Sal's ego is bigger than his brain. Seeing you up there, wearing Elliot's ring, standing with the twins, it'll eat him alive. He'll try something, even if it's just to get close, to test the waters. Gracie's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. What if he doesn't care about witnesses? Then we'll be ready. The dress arrived 2 days before the flight. Black silk that fell to her ankles, simple but elegant. Shoes that didn't have holes. A stylist who spent an hour teaching her how to walk in heels without falling. Gracie barely recognized herself in the mirror. The night before they left, Vito found her on the balcony. He handed her a small earpiece, flesh-colored and nearly invisible. I'll be in your ear the entire time, he said. You feel threatened, you say the word, and we extract you in under 10 seconds. Gracie turned the device over in her palm. So small, so fragile. What's the word? Lighthouse. She nodded, fitting the earpiece in carefully. Vito's voice came through crystal clear. Testing. Can you hear me? Yeah. He stepped closer, his expression serious. Listen to me, kid. This isn't the docks. This isn't some back alley where you can slip away unnoticed. You're walking into a room full of predators, and they're all going to be watching you. Sal most of all. I know. If this goes wrong. It won't. Vito studied her face, seeing something there she wasn't sure she wanted him to see. You've changed, he said quietly. That scared girl at the pier? She's gone. Gracie looked out at the dark ocean, feeling the weight of the ring on her thumb. She had to be, she said. For them. Vito nodded once, then left her alone with the weight. Breathe. Vito's voice came through the earpiece. You're doing fine. She wasn't doing fine. Her heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The announcement came at 8:30. A man with a microphone and a practiced smile introduced her as the guardian of Elliot Floyd's daughters, the young woman who'd saved their lives. Cameras flashed.
People clapped.
Gracie forced herself to smile, to wave, to pretend she belonged here. That's when she saw him. Salvatore Moretti moved through the crowd like he owned it. Tailored suit, silver hair perfectly styled, a smile that belonged on magazine covers. He was shaking hands, kissing cheeks, playing the role of grieving friend and concerned colleague. He was coming toward her. I see him, Vito said in her ear. Stay calm. Let him make the first move. Sal stopped in front of her, his smile warm and utterly false. You must be Gracie. I've heard so much about you. He extended his hand. She shook it. His grip was firm, calculated. The handshake of someone used to closing deals. Mr. Moretti, she said, keeping her voice steady. Please call me Sal. He looked down at the twins, his expression softening in a way that made Gracie's skin crawl. And these are Elliot's beautiful girls. I've been so worried about them. He reached down, his hand moving toward Emma's carrier. Let me hold one, he said gently. Elliot and I were brothers. I should.
No.
The word came out harder than she intended. The conversation around them stuttered. People were watching now. Sal's smile tightened. Excuse me? Gracie stepped between him and the stroller. She looked him dead in the eye, feeling the ring heavy on her thumb. Then she spoke the words engraved on the inside of the band, the coded phrase Elliot had made her memorize.
Per sangue e cenere, nessuno tocca la famiglia.
Through blood and ash, no one touches the family. Sal's face went pale, then red. His hand dropped. For just a second, the mask slipped, and she saw the rage underneath. The calculation, the intent. You little. Movement erupted around them. Vito's men materialized from the crowd, surrounding Sal in a tight circle. Camera flashes went wild. People backed away, confused, frightened. Sal tried to push through, but there were too many bodies, too many witnesses. His eyes found Gracie's across the chaos, promising violence, promising retribution. But he couldn't touch her. Not here.
Not now.
Extraction. Vito's voice said calmly in her ear. East exit. Move. Gracie grabbed the stroller and walked, head high, through the crowd that parted for her like water. Behind her, Sal Moretti was already being escorted out by men who weren't part of the venue's security. 5 years changed everything. Gracie stood in the glass-walled office overlooking Manhattan, watching the city move below like a living thing. She was 16 now, taller, her face sharper where childhood softness used to be. The baby blue dress was long gone, replaced by professional clothes that fit properly. But she still wore the ring on her thumb, polished but worn from years of turning it during meetings. The Fletcher Foundation took up 3 floors of the building. Child advocacy education programs, housing assistance for families in crisis. Legitimate money, legitimate work. The kind of power that didn't require violence to make a difference. Miss Fletcher? Her assistant poked her head in. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Thanks, Maria. I'll be right there. Miss Fletcher. She still wasn't used to it. The door opened wider and 2 girls burst in, ignoring all protocol. Emma came first, laughing, her backpack swinging. Lily followed more carefully, rolling her eyes at her sister's energy. They were 5 now, kindergarten graduates as of last week. Gracie. Emma threw herself at Gracie's legs. We learned about elephants today. Did you? Gracie knelt down, letting Emma show her the drawing she'd made, all crooked lines and purple crayon. Lily leaned against her shoulder, quieter but no less present. Mom's here too, she said. Gracie looked up. Their mother stood in the doorway, the woman Elliot had married 3 years ago. She smiled apologetically.
Saudi.
They insisted on saying hi before dinner. It's okay. Gracie stood, smoothing Emma's hair. I always have time for them. After they left, Gracie returned to the window. The city spread out below, millions of people living millions of lives. Somewhere down there, a kid was probably scavenging for bottles, stomach empty, wearing shoes with holes. Somewhere, someone was hearing a cry for help that everyone else ignored. She'd been that kid once. Invisible. Powerless. Hungry. The difference now was that she could do something about it. Elliot had recovered fully, though he walked with a cane on bad days. Sal's entire operation had collapsed within 6 months of the Vegas incident, dismantled piece by federal investigations and internal betrayals. Sal himself was serving life in a supermax prison upstate. No visitors.
No parole.
Vito still ran security, though these days it was for board members and charity events instead of criminal enterprises. He'd gained weight, smiled occasionally. He called Gracie boss now, and she was almost certain he meant it as respect, not sarcasm. The world hadn't become perfect. Violence still existed.
Greed still poisoned people.
Children still suffered while the powerful looked away. But Gracie had learned something that night on the docks, holding a dying man's ring and making an impossible promise. True power wasn't about how much you could take. It was about what you chose to protect. She turned from the window, grabbed her folder for the board meeting, and headed for the door. There were programs to fund, lives to change, vulnerable people who needed someone to hear them crying. She'd spent her whole life being invisible. Now she made sure others were seen. If you believe that the most vulnerable should always be protected from the greedy and the violent, hit the bell and subscribe to follow more stories like Gracie's journey.